Hi, welcome back to my channel. I want to do a video on things that, in regards to toxic people, you are in control of and things that you're not in control of. I don't know if this is a lot. I feel like it is. My hair hurts because I've got it in a bun. I don't want to like talk too much at the beginning. I think we're just going to ditch this headband actually, because even though I do enjoy it, it's just a lot. There's a lot going on, I think, with the lip and the hair and the makeup on the eyes. So we're going to just take off the headband. I think that makes a lot of difference. So anyway, not that it's that important to this video, but things that are in control and out of your control, because I was having a little journal and a little pray, and I was kind of like felt myself like, and I know this is a bad thing, and it's when you find yourself almost edging towards being concerned about another people's actions that don't necessarily, they might directly affect you, but not in the way that you should get like really riled up about it. But you're just sort of taking on the, especially if you're empathic, taking on the uncomfortable feelings of another person, which especially like any type of empath will take on, but also physical empaths. Like I can feel if I'm not careful about my energetic boundaries, and you know, I'm honestly still, it's still like a process, do you know what I mean? Like throughout all of my life I've dealt with this, and especially being in school and stuff, that was really stressful for me to be a physical empath and be around a lot of like, you know, hormonal people. It was just a lot for me to handle, because empaths can actually feel like you know, they'll absorb energy of negative people, even if it's not their own, and they kind of can feel it as their own. It can be very intense, and it's just something I've always had to sort of work on. But yeah, being logical about certain stuff can just like short wire the way you sort of intake that energy to an extent. I don't really know how to like put it, because it's like an energetic thing, and like, yeah, I don't know how it really works, but so things that are in your control. So I kind of was talking about like your energetic boundaries. Like I've got like a list, but I'm not going to sort of make it really boring, like go through them. But it's like your energetic boundaries generally, of like, we do have like an energetic aura, if you like, with several layers, which I don't really want to go into, but it's about understanding that, healing that, and making sure you're sort of protective of that through your action and sort of lifestyle. And by that I just mean sort of like maybe not abusing certain drugs if that's something that you don't get on well with, or if you do, then that's your choice. I'm not advocating anything or not advocating, but like maybe just like if you have like a lot of emotional wounds and stuff, you can have like bad aura layers, if you like, or weak ones, or trauma can bring on weak aura layers. And without getting too holistic and energetic about it all, you can control things like regulating your emotions, or learning to. You can't control, as I always say, what happens to you in your childhood, but you can control what you do going forward. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna have to take this headband thing off because I'm like dying. This happened to me yesterday where I put on a headband that was way too tight around my bun and it just killed me. I felt like I was in like a primary school like dancing competition or something where your hair's like scraped back. I never did like Irish dancing or anything, but that's the vibe. Anyway, oh, that's so much, oh my god, that's so much better. Anyway, so yeah, processing your emotions, be that through finding logic in a situation, and I do this by journaling often, or finding information about toxic people that helps me rationalise and understand and move through life through around toxic people, because as I mentioned in a past video, you still have to interact with them even on a really small basis, of like, you know, like shop assistants and stuff like that do have the capacity to make an impact on you, which sucks because you wouldn't choose to interact with them. It doesn't happen often, you know, but sometimes it can. I watched that video back actually, if anyone saw that, and I was like, I thought it literally, I looked a bit like mad by saying like, oh, he like called me out for like trying to steal something, but I literally didn't even steal. I did not look like I was stealing anything. I literally walked in the shop, walked back out, and he decided to take it upon himself to chase me out and accuse me of stealing something when there was no reason to. Like, I literally just didn't, like, why didn't he not chase the next person out? So that was kind of what I meant by sociopathic people targeting. So anyway, if you haven't watched that video, please ignore that comment. So you're in control of like your emotions to an extent, like you, in terms of processing trauma. I can stand by this thing called, I'm not actually 100% what it's called. It's an ECT or EGT tapping. If you type in like EGT tapping or something, it will come up on Google, where you sort of tap like here, 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 and you say the emotion you want to release, and it gets released. It's something about getting in tune with your energetic, because I'm a massive believer on somatic healing, because I'm a physical empath as well. It's a massive thing for me, like somatic healing. Even though I do really stand by things like journaling, and obviously like in the past I've had mental health service experience where I was with a therapist for talking therapies, and I definitely stand by that as well. But in terms of I've done a video on that as well if you want to know about that, stuff like that, previous in my channel. But yeah, if you're doing like the EGT tapping or whatever it is, that can be really helpful for literally like releasing emotion. You literally say like the emotion you want to release or process, or like, yeah, basically release. So like if you wanted to release like guilt, you'd say guilt, and it would literally just flow out of your body with that ECT tapping. It's really amazing. So stuff like that can help you release past pent-up emotion that has been stored in your body. Journaling and techniques around this can be, I always kind of touch on my journaling techniques that I need to like write about, but I will just mention them. Like there's like you can do like an anger diary where you like talk about the anger that you have about the situation that you had that made you angry, the amount of anger the duration of your anger, the intensity of your anger, and what you did about it, and then write a couple of notes like what would I do next time to change it, or like, you know, like what would I do next time kind of thing. And that can be really helpful for like processing anger and just like notifying it, because sometimes just being aware and conscious of like subconscious anger about a certain situation, even if it's like in the past and it's not something that affects you anymore, it can just help you process through it. Because often if you have an intense emotion, it can get stunted, especially if it's not socially acceptable to, or you don't appear that you don't feel that it's socially acceptable to express it at that time. For example, if you have an amount of empathy for other people, this is why people that are, I'm not saying people that are empathic are more vulnerable than like narcissists, but to an extent, if you feel a level of empathy and the need to conform, because obviously narcissists will get a sense of like it's not acceptable to show their narcissistic traits to another person straight away, and that makes them then, you know, repress their emotions. So I guess it works in all ways for different people, but you can get stunted in an emotion, and that's really unhealthy. So then when you do actually tap into that sort of stuff, it can really help you release trauma and emotion trapped in your body that's been unable to be fully like processed, because it's so normal to have like stunted emotion, and it makes an impact on your immune system. So journaling, and then also fears and resentments is really good for people that might have experienced like a level of CPTSD. I'm not a psychologist, but if you do have like any like repressed trauma, or like they say CPTSD is really related to narcissistic abuse. I've never been diagnosed with CPTSD, and I don't think I've got it like really bad, but I definitely think that like it's just a level of like I don't really want to get into all the like psychology of CPTSD because I'm not even like a psychologist, but when you write down your fears and resentments, you can like, that somehow helps. I watched the Crappy Childhood Fairy and she talks about that, so there's my journaling techniques for you. And generally just like writing about your emotions and feelings at that time, like what you're, and then the CBT thing, which I'm just going to mention, sorry, because it is actually really good, which I don't know what I've done with it, but oh yeah, you write what you can control. Sorry, you write, oh, I haven't got it on here. Shall I talk about that now? I should just do a whole other video, because I'm literally not talking about what I should talk about. I'm just going to say it because people that want to watch it will, and those who won't. You write what you're worried about, what the reality of the situation is, how what you can do about it, and why it'll be okay. So they're the like CBT apparently techniques that I've learned off the internet that you can do. But again, I'm not a psychologist or a clinical anything, so I would not rely on me, but they're just the things I do as a journaling technique. So how to move through a negative, so more things you can control, I suppose, from a holistic, from any level. You can move through an interaction with a toxic person, how you move, sorry, through an interaction with a toxic person. For example, picking your battles. For example, this would be like in a shop. For example, if you get a rude sales assistant that's literally having a bit of an epi-fit because the last person didn't like smile at them or something, because that is a genuine issue that can happen. Because if you don't know about narcissists, you might be like, what? But like narcissists, yeah, they're extremely sensitive and require extreme entitlement and feeling special, and if that isn't received and you seem like a normal person that they can just release a bit of anger on or displace a little bit of their displeasure for the day, then they will probably more than likely take that. Not that you should worry about going into shops, but just to say. But yeah, it's just about being aware of, I find. So picking your battles in terms of like maybe just like not smiling at her and just being a bit salty back and just being like, and just giving it back to them and just moving on with your day and allowing the energetic balance to work itself out. That would be what it would be with picking battles. Assertiveness, how it's kind of similar to the last thing, how you assert yourself in a situation. You don't have to, just because someone comes for you, just take their toxicity and just allow them to sort of wriggle off all their negativity onto you. It doesn't have to be that way. Like you can guard yourself. You can you can be narcissistic back, so people have a level of narcissism. If you want to be a bit like salty or nasty back or whatever, I don't think you should be kind to a toxic person, personally. It's not about not being kind. It's not about not being, I wouldn't say you shouldn't not be kind, but you didn't go out your way to be kind to an unkind person, is my point. Like, if you can go about it in a friendly way and they're not going to affect you, then fine. But it's always about being neutral with toxic people, or negative back, because they do like negative supply as well. So it's about bringing that in mind. I'm just going to delete a video. So yeah, as I was saying, and then also assertiveness. I think it's just so important to and I think I talk about this later, but it's so important, I find, to just know your rights as a person and your the will of free will that God gave you as a human being that you were born with. Like, I differentiated yesterday. Sometimes these observations come to me and I will journal them or whatever, and it came to me yesterday, the difference between a person with a personality sort of like narcissism, feeling entitled to your peace and your space, and coming into your personal life and whatever that means, be that giving you a funny look, or it sounds very subtle stuff, but it can just be that sort of level that covert narcissists will operate on to just evoke a negative reaction. Because no one likes a dirty look, let's be honest. No one likes a dirty look. It's not nice, especially when it's intentional. I'm sure I've given someone a resting bitch face at times, and I think resting bitch face is honestly anyway, let's not go into all the small things, but we all have a healthy level of narcissism. We all have a God-given free will to act the way we want. That does extend to narcissists. But anyway, I can't remember what I was really doing there, but yeah, I guess just knowing your own free will, acceptance of them, allowing them to be who they are. By this, I don't mean just allowing them to walk all over you, but I was saying, the difference between someone having the entitlement, that's grandiose and self, it's their grandiose sense of self entitling them mentally in a illogical sense to be able to move into your space and disrupt your peace by whatever subtle or non-subtle means that is, or whether it's just to rage at you or brutally attack you. That's a non-subtle way of someone doing that. That's different than you and their need for control in that sense, because often that can be also what it's based around. But then, and dominate, shall I say, if they're sociopathic, but also, but that's different to a person of average narcissism that's healthy or empathic, or non-narcissistic, shall I say, that has a healthy level of need for control and healthy narcissism that is an assertiveness and control over themselves and things they can control and have the right to control in their own lives for a healthy assertiveness, which goes around being a healthy person. That is two extremely different things, and that's why you should always hold your... I mean, like, we're not perfect human beings. I think this is something I'll talk about later. We're not perfect human beings. Like, we can't control every single action. Like, we can't control, and I'll get onto this, you can't control anything that someone else does to you. But without going on for like 12 hours, the fact is you can... I think you should hold your space as a autonomous human being. Autonomous is one thing, because finding autonomy is really a process, and also narcissists hate you to have autonomy. They like you to be codependent to them and dependent on them, which is why they will be really, really kind, and then they'll slowly like discard you and degrade you and stuff, so you can kind of keep running back to them for a sense of like validation that they've kind of trained you to comply to have, which is really annoying. But anyway, yeah, so acceptance of them and allowing them to be who they are doesn't mean that you should give, like, obviously you're going to put yourself first. Like, this would be bearing in mind you would be putting yourself first. Like, I wouldn't say obviously, there's nothing obvious about it. By this I would mean putting yourself first, knowing your own boundaries, but also letting them do what they want in the background. Like, given it doesn't affect you, you know what I mean? You can always like have a reaction. It's always humans have a reaction. They often look for a reaction. But if you have a reaction, it doesn't make you a bad person, you know what I mean? You know, even if it means you're giving them a sense of supply. I always think long term it's good to know what they're after in terms of a sense of supply and a sense of reaction, because like they're so like dull, boring people, toxic people, but it's like, you know, like how dull do you have to be to go and try and get a rise out of someone that is literally doing nothing wrong, and you're going to get a negative reaction. That just shows how dull they are, to my understanding anyway. But it's a case of, you know, I mean, that's the research that I've seen on stuff like that, but yeah, but like in terms of letting, like, they're going to be that way regardless of how you react to them. And if you have a short-term reaction to their toxicity, it means that you're a human being, not just a source of supply for them. So it's important to realise that you're an autonomous being outside of their abuse. Like, you're not like a robot. You can't just move around. Like, even if you know the education about narcissists, they're still going to try and trigger you, and sometimes they will. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you're a human being. If they didn't, then you'd be unhealthy. Do you know what I mean? It's normal to have a reaction, and it's like validating that. Also, indifference, that you can build towards them. Once you do process their abuse, you can hopefully come to a place of indifference, especially if you limit contact with them, or, you know, cut off contact or whatever. You can really put all the toxicity back into the arena that it came from with them. What's helped me recently is to recognise how toxicity has continued in a situation that I've removed myself from. So obviously that proves, sometimes obviously if you know on a logical basis, it's good to I'm one of those people where I like words of affirmation, so to actually write that down and affirm that within myself is actually really just builds good neural pathways in your mind to help you remember that sort of thing. Yeah, you can build indifference by doing this, because you just see that like you're not the problem, and you were never the problem, and you just dealt with the situation the best way any sane person would. Next thing is taking legal action. A bit of a deeper dive there, but you know, sometimes it is prevalent that narcissists will abuse in any way they can, be that physically, sexually, you know, financially, sociopathically, any of the above. And it's so important to know that the legal system is there for a reason, and sometimes you do unfortunately have to take action towards these people in order to actually get what's yours, be that whatever you consider yours, you know, justice for what you've had to go through, in terms of physical or sexual abuse or anything like that, if you consider that something. I always think revenge isn't the best way to go, but sometimes you just want to report them to the police, and often people don't. It's so prevalent, people don't. I think it's something like sexual abuse, a very, very small minority of sexual abuse actually gets reported to the police, just because of the embarrassment and stress that the victim has to endure. But things like financial abuse as well can be really stressful to have to go through, and possibly expensive for the person that actually has to go through getting the compensation, for like financial abuse or whatever. But you know, legal system is there for a reason. Also, finding emotional support, again, this kind of goes with regulating your emotions. The boundaries you set, which I always say you should set boundaries anyway. Narcissists will not give you comfort, they'll not give you validation. In fact, they will give you the opposite, they'll try and take away anything good. It's just built-in instinct within them. They're like snaky personalities. You know, so anyway, so the boundaries you set, so yeah, they won't respect your boundaries, but it's about setting them anyway with these people because they're so dysregulated. Like they honestly could not care less about your own boundaries. Like they only care about getting their needs served. But the boundaries you set do make a massive difference to like how they will interact with you anyway, because even though they try and take control from the situation, you don't have to give them that control, and setting boundaries is one way to protect yourself and, as I say, like set neuro pathways that are going to protect you moving forward from this sort of behaviour once you sort of discern from it in a healthy way and process it, so you don't get sort of sucked back in. And also, if you do this, you'll be considered a poor sense of supply from them, and they'll often discard you. Like if you're actually not giving them what they want and you are setting boundaries, because depending on what kind of narcissist they are, usually generically, but it means like they'll often like try and bulldoze you or figure out what your price is in terms of like gaining supply from you, and like what they have to do to, which obviously like it's not going to last. It's a love bombing sort of like way to get in the door, and then they start to devalue you, and all paths lead to negativity and toxicity with toxic people. But once, you know, if you're not even giving them an inch, they're not going to try. You know, often if they're especially new in your life, they're not going to even bother with you because they'll just think there's no point. Like, I'm just going to waste all my, you know, limited energy anyway because I'm so busy trying to regulate myself and you know, pull one on every single person that comes over. You know, just because narcissists are toxic doesn't mean like they're strong people. Often they're very weak and easy to manipulate, and also very weak people. In terms of like they don't have a good moral standpoint, so don't think that they're just going to be there like trying with you again and again and again and again because they don't have a good sense of like willpower. Like they might do that if they think they can get a rise out of you, but it's a case of like if they have logical sense and they're not sort of like that delusional in their own mindset that they're unaware of their own like energetic capacity, and they like don't give themselves like genuine mental health problems because they're so challenged trying to like obviously keep up with their own toxic behavior, because that can happen. I'm not saying like mental health, anyway, let's not get into mental health here because mental health is a very diverse topic, and I'm not saying if you have mental health problems you're a narcissist or anything like that, because I've had mental health problems and I'm an empath. It's nothing to do with that, and I'm not saying I would wish mental health problems on anyone, but I'm saying that it can cause mental health problems as a comorbid thing with narcissism in particular, because of obviously the stress that is related to the situation. But yeah, so but I do think for me it's also about having a faith in God, that I think God gives us like the right energy to give to the right people, like in terms of like I don't think if we are given, this is my personal belief, but I think that if God gives us the energy to give to someone healthy, it's not going to be displaced to another person. And I think sometimes toxic people can take up a lot of your energy and sort of actually stop you from interacting with someone healthy that you would have interacted with or have more energy to interact with, because you've had to sort of deal with that as a precursor. And I suppose it's just about building around that and learning from your mistakes, because we are human beings at the end of the day. Narcissists demand perfection, and that's their unrealistic boundary, one of them, one of their many unrealistic boundaries with normal people and themselves, to be honest. And it's about realising like, you know, that's not attainable, and obviously it's a fallacy, and obviously not holding yourself to that standard. Yeah, and it's also, I think, important not to be hyper vigilant to the extent that you can, like, because you can't, like, as I say, control other people. So like any negative thing that happens to you, you can't actually control that. You can build boundaries around yourself in order to protect from it to the extent you can, but at the same time you should never beat yourself up for like toxic behavior that is incurring on you, because it's not something that you have control over, and it's not about for you to be hyper vigilant in order to avoid it at all costs, because then you would just be, again, wasting all your energy on people that don't deserve it. Knowing your rights and being aware of them, be this legal rights, energetic rights, verbal rights, human rights, your right to not be attacked in whatever way that means, sexually or physically or verbally or whatever. Standing up for those rights when needed, but as I said, narcissists will not validate your rights. If anything, they'll just counteract it in whatever illogical way that makes sense in their mind and make up lies. And that is how they will react. But when you know your rights, you can just either just not even say it to them in the first place if you don't feel it's relative, or you can say it actually. So I don't think there's anything ever wrong with voicing your rights. But at the same time, you can just let it go. If it's something like a shop assistant, you can just be like, yeah, okay, walk off. Like, it doesn't really make a difference, you know what I mean? Like, if it's someone like really, really short term that you have to deal with. Making time for your happiness and the activities that are important to you. Obviously, this is personal to each person. Your priorities. Again, this is what I was kind of talking about not wasting your energy on these type of people that just kind of do suck the life from you. And that's kind of their goal, to get all your energy out, so you won't thrive and they will then feel a sense of superiority, but also to actually be validate their sense of superiority and grandiosity in the eyes of themselves, and believe that they are some sort of center of your planet. Because I think narcissists are all delusional to an extent, because they have to validate their narcissistic sense of self, but I've come across a varying range of delusion that narcissists will go into. Like, self-aware narcissists can bring themselves back to earth, but I have come across narcissists that are so honestly on their own, I don't even want to say planet, they're on their own stratosphere. And that's kind of funny I say that, because I talked about not to get all like whatever, but I talked about negative star seeds, so maybe it's funny that I actually said that, but they're on this own personal level that I just can't relate to that validates their narcissism so thoroughly, completely against the the overt reaction of others that don't validate it. They're still on that delusion, and it's very, very ongoing, and it's just very, very, very certain to them, even though it's clearly not the case. Like, they can have a mindset that they are at the center of another person's world, where it's literally not the case at all. Someone can be literally, someone can have a real, a narcissist can have a real sense that they are the priority, even if it's like they don't think that someone thinks about them every single day of the year. They'll just have this real sense of entitlement around most people, that most people are, some people's narcissists can be paranoid and they have this sense of everyone's looking at me and whatever, and it's just really hilarious, to be honest. I don't like to have malicious humour. You don't have to act like a narcissist. This is the thing about narcissists. If you're around them a lot, you tend to start copying them to an extent, and we all do have narcissistic traits. And I think it's okay to level out that a little bit. So if you do kind of pick up little things from them from time to time, it can just be something that can be integrated into your own personality to kind of balance out that healthy narcissism. But at the same time, it's not a case of you have to act like a narcissist. A healthy person is not going to get the same kind of joy that a narcissist would in terms of their personality. So making time for happiness, rest. Oh, so that knowing your priorities, knowing your right to say no. This kind of goes with your rights as well. It's just something that just I think. Again, it's just balance and knowing what situations to actually say no to and what situations just to let go and actually just not even assert yourself in, because it's not even necessary, because of the interaction that's happening for whatever reason. The right to not take on another person's anything. So in terms of narcissists will a massive part of narcissism is displacing their uncomfortable feeling of, or not even uncomfortable, their dysregulated feelings of rejection, poor ego, poor emotional boundaries, poor sense of self, negative traits, be whatever that is, onto another person because they're unable to reflect on themselves and actually internalize what's happening to them. So they have to put that onto someone else in whatever sense that means. If that means getting a rise from another person, if that means getting aggressive with another person, if it means getting deluding themselves into thinking they're some form of grandiose person that they actually are not. Whatever way that means, narcissists do it in a variety of ways. But but people that do project, you're not entitled or obligated, shall I say, to do that to anyone. Like, you choose who you have your interactions with and your relationships with. I always say an abusive relationship is not a relationship. It's not a healthy relationship. It's not like, abuse is abuse and a relationship is a relationship. A relationship is healthy. Toxicity is abuse. It's abuse, do you know what I mean? That's not a relationship. That's not a two-way relationship. That's a victim and an abuser. That's not what a relationship is. I guess it's just about discerning that. And it's also about being aware of safe porting and how to decline this. Safe porting is which is when people like kind of give you this like, I can't get out of it kind of mindset. Like, we are neighbours, so like you can't like you have to take my unreasonable behaviour. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not something that I have to do. I have my own rights. You're not my friend. I don't know you. You have your legal rights and your freedom of speech in order to handle things the way that you want to handle it within your own boundaries, and your boundaries don't need to be infringed on by a toxic person. And that's just the kind of neural pathways that can be built through interacting with different people through forms of life, you know what I mean? And safe porting can be like, unfortunately, if it's sexual, it can be like, but you said that you can come to my house, so you have to sleep with me kind of thing. Obviously, that's kind of like over, and most people would like think red flag, but it can be something that can come across, especially to young, vulnerable people that don't really know how to be assertive at times, and that's a really unfortunate thing that can happen. That can be a predatory action of people that are, going to rape, for example. So no, that was deep, but not doubting yourself. I do think your intuition is really powerful, and if you do pay attention to it, it can tell you a lot. Like, your intuition tells you what your mind hasn't caught up with yet, and it can just, if you listen to your intuition first, it can just put a pause on those mental pathways that build during the time that your mind is picking up the logistics to a situation where you can just listen to your intuition, and that can be a better guide for you rather than picking up on all the logistic facts, because people can be so deceptive. People can say anything they want to try and like drag you into their toxicity, and it can be very good sounding, especially during a love bombing period. People can be very deceptive in the way they actually talk and act. And it can be very confusing for someone that's trying to discern a toxic person by just the logistics, which is why your intuition is so helpful. I think it's also about being aware that when you have like a trauma, sometimes intuition could be slightly off. Like, you can feel a sense of like hypervigilance or paranoia around a healthy interaction. That I don't like to use the word paranoia, but you can feel this way. You can just feel a sense of like over vigilance in a healthy situation, where you're anticipating abuse that is not going to incur. So I think that's worth keeping in mind. But obviously, given you thought about that, and you're not like so deeply traumatized that you really need some like help, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've been there. It's fine. It's out there. Please seek it if anyone needs it. Whoever I'm saying that to, probably no one, but just to say, not doubting yourself in that sense can just be really validating for you as a person, especially if you've grown up without this validation. It can be really helpful to give it to yourself as a healthy adult and sort of heal your inner child that wasn't validated in the past. Because everyone needs to be validated, everyone deserves to be validated as a child, and if you weren't, it can just make you a self-doubting adult. What you can't control is other people's reaction to you, be that abusive or covert, or so overt or covert, be that a physical, verbal, sexual, psychological attack, as in like emotional attack, or whatever. or, you know, impending attack, threats and whatever, or a covert attack in terms of, you know, being passive aggressive and doing strange things and feeling entitled and saying weird things to you, and doing covert narcissism. Really, I've seen vary in a massive variety of ways, of people that have covert narcissism, because they're not overt about their narcissism, so it can really vary in a massive amount of ways. Whatever they feel they can get a reaction from, they will do. So I don't know which one's worse, if I'm honest, but anyway, that's not in your control. So they're going to do that anyway, and it's not about beating yourself up or wasting any mental energy trying to resolve that in your own mind. I think our intuition knows this, but often from a neuropathways level, we can, through rumination, which is often something very, very early on in narcissistic abuse that I found out about, at least, you can have this sense of rumination after narcissistic abuse, especially after a discard or after you've discarded them, to actually figure out the situation. You're kind of stuck in this like perplexed mindset of like trying to get your head as a logical person around this sort of abusive behaviour and how it could have happened to you, what you did wrong, because the mind is really clever and it tries to just make sense of a situation. So from your point of view, it's just your mind trying to make sense of a toxic person that if you're not toxic, you're not going to understand. And until you're educated. Narcissism is actually a really, really complicated subject, and it took me a few months to really get my head around it fully, if not more, to be honest, at least a few months. And it is quite complicated, and there's so many narcissistic abuse recovery channels online which give all the information, which I'm so grateful about, and also information on other things. And once you actually start applying that to like real life, it does make such a difference in terms of your just like day-to-day navigation of toxic people, because they are everywhere, do you know what I mean? And once you actually know how to handle them in a healthy way, that is just obviously preserving your own energy and just sort of like not giving that sort of stuff away that they want. It really just does protect you and helps you to sort of manage the unhealthy interactions. And also lastly, how they are made is not in your control, as in being a narcissist or a toxic person, and the entitlement of that they have to your peace because they don't have it themselves. So yeah, sorry, I just didn't want to lose that video because I'm going to finish now, but yeah, you don't have to take on their toxicity. You don't have to feel any sort of way, even pity, to be honest, to them. And I think once you realise this is who they are as a person, it makes you have a lot less, I don't know, I think I'm still on this train, to be honest, at the moment. And I'm also, I think, working on how not to safe port, or to recognise safe porting, because I think there's still more things about narcissism that I'm learning at the moment, such as like how they will try and like replace you in your own life or something. I saw a video about that earlier, and they'll do things to force you to leave because they want you to leave if they feel like they're done with you. I kind of knew about that already, but they'll literally openly abuse you so you can see it and they can see it, and it's overt in their behaviour, and they might even do it in front of other people just because they want you to leave, and they're just, it's just a real horrible thing. But anyway, yeah, you're not responsible for who they are, how they're made, how toxic they are. That's not something that you need to ruminate over. It's not in your control. Anything you do will not change that. It will always be the case. And it can just come from like childhood or past trauma that you are sort of stuck with a toxic person and they will just consistently project on you. It can give you this sense of like somehow it's your responsibility to take on because that's how they want you to feel. Obviously on a logical and intuitive level you know this. I think it's about coming to the neuropathway realization of like it's a, you know, it's probably a broken pathway anyway, because you know on logic level it's not true, and as many times you go over it doesn't make it true. Just if someone tells you the sky's green 1,000 times you might doubt it, but at the same time you know it's not true. So it's just about sort of like short wiring that question in your mind and just knowing that like it's not your fault that someone else is toxic, and it's not your fault that they will inevitably be that way, and it's not your fault that they react a certain way or have a level of entitlement towards your healthy way of being that you've like got the right to live because you are a healthy person. And it's a level of karma to an extent. Like, they're very resentful because they don't recognise their own negative behaviour often. They're like, what, you know, because they can't like sense this level of karma that comes to them by being a negative person, they'll like be like, oh, that person's healthy and positive and like peaceful, I need to take that from them because it's not fair that they have it and I don't because I'm just the same as them. And it's like, no, the reason you're how you are is because you're toxic, and the reason I am how I am is because I'm healthy and because I'm, you know, made the way I am, and I don't put that negative energy into the atmosphere, so I don't receive it back. If you want to look at it that way. But anyway, I've rambled on for ages, so I'm going to go, but thanks for listening, bye.